Okay, let's go over how to use the handheld camera effect. Um, let's start by, as we said earlier, let's pick a preset from the factory presets and see what we get. It's pretty nice. Let's compare it to turned off. Turned off, it's just a lock off. With it on, yeah, just a little tiny bit of camera motion. So let's adjust it from here. Let's open our main settings. So here we see that there's all different data sets. You can look through all of these, or from all different sources. And there's 21 of them. Currently, oh my goodness, this is 17, the close-up. So it's not bike on gravel, even though that's what. So this is the data set that's chosen. See, there's a speed, there's an intensity, and there's an image scale. The image scale is because basically, if you're going to move the camera around, we're going to be shooting off the frame. So like, for instance, if we do it too small, you see we have all this mirroring going on because we're shooting off the frame. So we got to generally push in just a little bit. So here's a 4% push in, which looks about right. And a little later on, we'll discuss how to optimize that. So let's say we want it a little more intense than this. So we just turn up the intensity. And see now all the motion is all multiplied. Let's say we won't want it quite as relaxed. We can turn up the speed. And the camera motion plays back faster. Or we can turn it down. Now it's more gentle in terms of speed, but more intense in terms of how far it moves. So although these two things sometimes appear to have similar effects, they're different. One of them is how far the motion goes, that's intensity, and the other one is how fast the data plays back, and that's speed. And image scale, you'll have to adjust depending upon, mostly this intensity setting. So let's turn this up a little bit. As you can see, when you change the speed, it kind of jiggles around because it recalculates where it's supposed to be in the playback of the motion capture data. So you got to this is not an effect you can animate, unfortunately, but you can animate all the others. So you can't animate speed, but you can animate intensity, because speed, when you change the speed, it has to recalculate where it is in the playback. Okay. Let's look at some of these other things. Effect scale. So some of these effects have rotation and some of them don't. And all of these multiply, for instance, this one multiplies the amount of rotation. So I don't know if this effect has rotation. Let's see. Yes, so now you can see I've multiplied the amount of camera rotation. You can see that it's rotating more. Or I can go negative on it, or get it close to zero to more or less eliminate it, which you'll find you will want to do a lot. So let's put it back to its normal. Translation factor means this amplifies the amount of left, right, up, down translation uniformly. So now there's a bit more up, but you see we're running off the screen. So if we want to amplify the translation, we're probably going to have to increase the image scale. So let's do that. So if we want to have this much shake, we probably have to blow up the image quite a bit. So let's get a little lower. Actually, let's zero it out. You know what? While we're here, because we're seeing the issue here, in miscellaneous here, see there's this show overshoot button. Let's click it. And now you can see this where it's red is when we have problems where we're shooting off the frame. So red means that we're shooting off the frame, and this contrary color over here is showing where the problem exists, because sometimes the problem is very small. So this makes it easy to see what's happening. I'm increasing the image scale slowly, and now the problem is gone. But notice there's still a couple of spots where, let's isolate a couple of those little problem frames here. See, there's this little teeny bit over here because I've got the overshoot tolerance set to 0.8%. So if 0.8% of the screen is problematic, it's not going to highlight it. Because we have this edge treatment here, in this case it's set to mirror. It could be set to stretch. Let me show you exactly what those are. So let's pull this way down. So stretch basically repeats that last pixel. You see these edges are stretched out. And mirror mirrors that last pixel. So generally speaking, well, let's show our overshoot. So now we know we have lots of overshoot. So let's make it so that there's just a tiny, you can see there's this little tiny bit of overshoot over here. And it's shown to us in this contrary color to whatever your selected color is. But if you have, if you can tolerate a little bit, like let me turn off show overshoot, this is fine. So in this particular case, having a tiny bit of overshoot, basically 0.8% overshoot, seems to be looking okay. So that's how you deal with overshoot. It's an interplay between the image scale and these edge treatments. Okay, back to where we were. Effect scale. So this multiplies the amount of rotation. This multiplies the amount of overall translation. This multiplies just the amount of horizontal motion. Like in this particular case, it seems as though there's a lot more up and down motion than there is left and right motion. So let's even it out. Let's multiply the left-right. So now they're both about even. And now we can just take down the translation to make it just, less overall if that's what we want. So you have separate controls over how broad the X translation is, how broad the Y translation, and the same thing with the amount of zoom. Some effects have no zoom and other effects have lots of zoom, but in this case this effect has no zoom, so this has no impact. That's it for effect scale. Effect offset is similar to scale, except for these are basically constants. So for instance, if you want to level out a shot, obviously we've made it not level, but we've added 18 degrees to everything. So these are constants, and you can animate these too. Like for instance, if there's a specific spot where you don't like the bump, you can sort of take the translation and animate it with keyframes. So, for instance, you can move it to the left, set a keyframe, move it back to the right, set a keyframe, and Bob's your uncle. So this is a way to, to mitigate, like if there's a frame or a little teeny bit that you don't like, you can kind of hand animate bits of it. This frame offset is a little bit different than the others. This is where in the recording, where in the data set you start playing. So this has a 50 frame offset. So in other words, it's advanced 50 frames. Like for instance, if you didn't like the very beginning of the shot, the beginning of the motion capture, you can advance this by 100 frames, and it basically starts the playback of the motion capture data 100 frames later, or 100 frames earlier. And while we're talking about that, see this motion capture data is 439 frames long, and they all loop seamlessly. So as you can see, some of them are very short. Let's look at this one. Whoa, this one's got a lot of intensity here. So this is handy camera, and let's turn the intensity down. Obviously completely inappropriate for this content. But as you can see, this is someone running with a handycam. And with the right content, this would be perfect. But this isn't the right content. Let's go back to where we were. Let's go to this one. No? Okay. I see. Okay. So those are most of the controls that you're really going to need. Truth is, you're probably going to want to start from one of these, from one of these presets, and maybe change the speed or the intensity a bit, and then you might have to change the image scale. Maybe you'll want to show the overshoot if you're having some trouble, so you'll tune the image scale until the overshoot is acceptable. And that's 95+% of the ways you're going to use this. But you can tune it to exactly what you want. And when you get it exactly as you want, well, for instance, let's turn up the image scale. And let's turn up the intensity. Let's turn up the speed. Okay, so let's say that's what we like. We can make our own preset here. So we can call it my, oops, we have to stop playback and go my handheld look. And if we hit this save button here, now we have my handheld look here in one of our own presets, and this will persist from session to session, and you will have that forever and ever. And you can, manage these. You can delete your presets by hitting the delete button. You can delete that, and you still have your presets here, and also the factory presets.